Hong Kong, 1999. A vertical city where people live stacked on top of one another, where the bustle of night markets hums beneath luxury penthouses, and where neon hides everything from glitz to decay. In a city that never sleeps, a young woman vanished. Not with a scream, not with a bang, but with a whisper. Her name was Fan Man-yee. She was 23 years old, petite, quiet, not particularly noticeable in a crowd, but her life had been anything but ordinary. Abandoned as a child, raised in government orphanages. She was kicked out at 15, too old to stay. And just like that, she was alone. No family, no job, no money. She did what many in her situation were forced to do. She turned to the streets. Sex work, drug use, survival. But Fan, she wasn't just a victim. She had fight in her. By her early 20s, she'd started trying to claw her way out. She joined a Christian support group. She got married, not a perfect marriage, but something. She gave birth to a son. She found a job as a hostess at a karaoke bar. Low pay, long hours, but legal. She was trying to live straight. She was trying, but the streets don't let go that easily. And that's where Chan Man-lock comes in. A man nearly twice her age. Wealthy, but not in the clean kind of way. A loan shark, a gambler, and someone long rumored to have ties to the triads, Hong Kong's feared underground crime syndicates. Fan owed him money, not much, but debt doesn't need to be big to be dangerous. She made the wrong decision. A moment of desperation. She stole his wallet, a small act, a bad idea, but nothing that should lead to death. When Chan found out, she tried to return the money. She pleaded, she begged, and for a moment, it seemed like he might accept it. He didn't. On March the 17th, 1999, Fan Man-yee was last seen alive. A cab dropped her off outside a rundown apartment complex on Granville Road in the Tsim Sha Tsui district. It was late. She was alone. No one ever saw her come out. 3 months passed. Her face was added to missing person boards. Flyers went up. Her husband filed a report, but nothing came of it. She was just another vanished girl in a city full of secrets. Until a 13-year-old girl walked into a police station. She wasn't there to turn herself in. She just wanted the nightmares to stop. The girl had been living with Chan Man-lock, his so-called girlfriend, though she was barely a teenager. And what she told police would make even the most hardened detectives go cold. She said there was a woman held prisoner, beaten, starved, tortured, and not just once. Every night, every day, for weeks. The officers didn't know what to make of it. She was a teen. She'd been in trouble before. The story was too grotesque, too cinematic. But something in her eyes told them to check anyway. They went to the apartment on Granville Road. Room 31. They opened the door, and nothing prepared them for what they would find inside. In a bedroom, among the trash and drug paraphernalia, was a large stuffed Hello Kitty mermaid doll. Cute, playful, innocent. But sewn inside that doll was a human skull. When police entered room 31 of the old apartment building on Granville Road, they expected drug paraphernalia. Maybe evidence of abuse, maybe nothing at all. What they walked into was something else entirely. The air was thick, stale, rotten. There were needles on the floor, fast food boxes, empty bottles of cough syrup, the kind of place where time seems to stop. But then they saw the doll, a Hello Kitty mermaid plush, nearly the size of a child, perched upright on the bed. Big eyes, a cartoon smile. At first glance, it was almost out of place. Too innocent for the room around it, but when they picked it up, they noticed the stitching. It had been sewn shut. Inside, they found a human skull, the teeth still intact, burn marks etched along the top. No body, no limbs, just the head, sewn into a toy. They immediately took Fan Man-yee into custody, and with him, 2 other suspects emerged: Leung Wai-lun, 27, Leung Xing-cho, just 21. All 3 had been living in that apartment, drinking, getting high, watching TV, while the unimaginable unfolded just a room away. And then, there was the girl, 13 years old. She had run away from home months earlier. Chan had taken her in, called her his girlfriend, but really, she was just another victim. And now, she became the only witness. Through tears, she told the detectives what she had seen, what she had heard. Night after night, Fan Man-yee had been tied to metal bars, beaten with iron rods, forced to eat her own feces, burned with melted plastic straws, mocked, laughed at, turned into sport. Sometimes she passed out for hours. Sometimes she begged them to kill her, but they didn't. Not at first. The girl said they treated her like a toy, a broken one, a thing. She remembered Fan whispering, "Please, let me go home," again and again, until one day she stopped speaking altogether. They claimed they didn't kill her, that she died from a drug overdose, that they were only trying to punish her. But that's not how her remains looked. Her skull told another story. And the condition of that apartment, the burn marks, the stained sheets, the melted tools, said more than words ever could. By July 1999, headlines in Hong Kong were ablaze. Hello, Kitty Horror, woman's skull found in toy. Teen girl tells of weeks of torture. People were horrified, not just by the crime, but by the symbolism. How could something so innocent hide something so evil? The Hello Kitty doll became a symbol, not of childhood, but of urban nightmares, of a city too fast, too crowded, where even monsters could hide in plain sight. By the end of 1999, Hong Kong was captivated and horrified. 3 men were arrested. 1 girl had come forward. A skull had been sewn inside a Hello Kitty doll. But for prosecutors, there was one massive problem. No body. They had Fan Man-yee's skull, yes, but no other remains. The men claimed she died of a heroin overdose, and that they panicked. There were no clear witnesses to the moment of death, only the aftermath. In court, the 3 suspects, Fan Man-yee, Leung Wai-lun, and Leung Xing-cho, sat stone-faced. They didn't deny Fan had been imprisoned. They didn't deny she'd been beaten. They only denied that they had killed her. The trial began in November 2000, and it quickly became a media frenzy. Fan's husband sat quietly in the back. So did her former co-workers. The press packed the courtroom, and at the center of it all was the 13-year-old girl. She was the star witness. Testifying in chilling detail, she described how Fan had been tied up with electrical cords, how she was forced to smile while being beaten, how the men laughed when she cried, how they cooked instant noodles while Fan lay dying in the next room. Her words painted a picture more horrifying than anything the public had imagined. But then, the defense made its move. They questioned her credibility, suggested her trauma had warped the truth, insinuated she had been an eager participant. They even asked if she'd fabricated the whole story for attention. But the jury wasn't convinced, because the evidence inside that apartment, the tools, the ropes, the burn marks, the filth, told a story no child could invent. And then came the psychological reports. Each of the 3 men was evaluated. Chan, the ringleader, was found to have no diagnosed mental illness, just an overwhelming lack of empathy. Leung Wai-lun was described as passive but complicit, easily manipulated but disturbingly numb. and the youngest, Leung Shing-cho, reportedly laughed during his assessment when asked about Fan's final days. The prosecution couldn't charge them with murder, not without full remains or cause of death. So instead, they pursued manslaughter and unlawful imprisonment, and preventing lawful burial. The verdict? All three were found guilty. Chan received the longest sentence, life in prison with no chance of parole for 20 years. The others, lengthy terms but not life. Still, no one left that courtroom feeling justice had truly been served, because no sentence could match what had been done. Outside the courthouse, people left flowers, some for Fan, some just because they didn't know what else to do. But inside Hong Kong's tight urban corridors, a new kind of fear had settled in. Because this wasn't some remote village. It wasn't a story from decades ago. It was here, now. And it had happened in a place just like yours. After the trial, the headlines faded. The crowds left the courtroom. The city moved on. But Hong Kong didn't forget. Because this case left a scar. A scar stitched into the heart of the city, just like that skull sewn into the Hello Kitty doll. In the weeks that followed, people stopped buying Hello Kitty merchandise. Parents wouldn't let their children near anything with that smiling cartoon face. Toy stores quietly removed plush dolls from their shelves. Some even closed their Hello Kitty sections entirely. It wasn't just grief, it was contamination. Hello Kitty had once meant innocence, childhood, sweetness, safety. Now, it was a symbol of death. A year later, apartment 31 on Granville Road was abandoned. No one would rent it, not even for free. Locals began whispering about the building. Stories emerged. Some said lights flickered at night, that tenants heard scratching noises through the walls, that a woman's voice cried faintly through the pipes. Most of these were just stories, but that's what urban legends are. They grow in the spaces facts can't fill, and this case left behind a lot of space. The 13-year-old girl, the one who'd come forward, disappeared from public life after the trial. Her name was never released. She was placed under state protection, moved, hidden, erased. Some say she tried to take her own life years later. Others say she left Hong Kong entirely. No one knows for sure. But Fan Man-yee's son? He was barely a toddler when she vanished. He grew up without knowing his mother. Only what the news said about her. Only what the courts documented. Only the echoes of a crime no child should inherit. And what of the men? Chan Man-lok remained silent in prison. He never apologized, never admitted guilt. He became something else, not just a criminal, but a legend. A boogeyman wrapped in tabloid ink and infamy. The younger men faded into obscurity. Their faces resurfaced online from time to time, in Reddit threads, true crime forums, urban myth blogs. But they were no longer people, they were symbols. Symbols of what Hong Kong wanted to forget, but couldn't. And then there was the doll. It was destroyed, burned, reduced to ash by court order, but some say it never left. That copies of the doll appear in pawn shops and thrift stores. That cursed dolls, with wide eyes and sewn mouths, still show up in dark corners of the internet. Again, just stories. But that's the power of horror wrapped in childhood. This wasn't just a murder. It was a corruption of something sacred. The image of Hello Kitty, once adorable, now stained with blood and memory. People still cross the street when they pass the Granville Road building. Even now, even after all these years, because some ghosts don't haunt places, they haunt culture. It's easy to remember Fan Man-yee for how she died. It's harder to remember how she lived, and nearly impossible to ignore how the world failed her at every turn. Because long before a Hello Kitty doll became her tomb, Fan was forgotten, abandoned, discarded like the very trash that would later fill her killer's apartment. She was born into poverty. No father, no steady home, just a mother lost to addiction and a city that barely noticed she existed. At just 5 years old, she was taken into state care, placed in an orphanage not for nurturing, but for containment. These places weren't sanctuaries. They were overrun, understaffed, sometimes violent. Fan grew up surrounded not by safety, but survival. She watched children disappear in and out. Some were adopted, some ran away, some never came back. At 15, she was told her time was up. No diploma, no job training, no housing plan, just a warning, be careful out there. And the door closed behind her. She fell hard, onto the same streets that had swallowed thousands before her. She lived in cage homes, tiny metal boxes stacked like filing cabinets, shared by strangers, barely large enough to lie down. She sold her body to survive, took drugs to forget, stole to eat. Every arrest pushed her farther out. Every mugshot another nail in the coffin of her chances. But she never gave up, and when she slipped, just once, into debt with a violent man named Fan Man-yee, everything collapsed. He wasn't just a gangster, he was a predator. And Fan? She was an easy target. No police would protect her. No shelter would take her in with a criminal record. No caseworker followed up to check if she was okay. Because society had already decided who she was. A junkie, a hooker, a write-off, not worth saving. And even after her death, the media buried her in stigma. Prostitute murdered by clients. Addict meets gruesome end. No mention of her as a mother. No space for her as a survivor. No dignity, not even in death. This case isn't just about cruelty. It's about apathy, about how entire systems can look at a broken young woman and decide, not our problem. That is the true horror, and it continues every day, in every city, in every alley, where women like Fan still live and vanish unseen. We speak her name now, but it took her death to make us do it. What would have changed if we spoke it while she was still alive? Before the Hello Kitty murder, before the courtroom headlines and urban legends. Fan Man-yee was just another name in Hong Kong's growing underworld, but behind that name was a man with more control, more manipulation, and more darkness than anyone around him realized. Born in 1965, Chan grew up in a dense public housing estate. Crowded stairwells, flickering fluorescent lights, where kids played soccer next to trash piles and gangs recruited outside school gates. Chan didn't shine in school, he didn't stand out, but he watched, listened. He learned early that fear was currency, and debt was power. In his 20s, Chan became a mid-level triad enforcer, collecting loans, enforcing payment, running drugs, running scams. But unlike many around him, Chan didn't crave chaos. He craved structure. He kept records. He knew names, birth dates, family members. He loaned money with terms and always collected. To his gang, he was useful, reliable, not flashy. To outsiders, he was invisible. He lived in a modest apartment, wore cheap shirts, didn't drive a fancy car, but inside his apartment, behind locked doors, was something else. A darkness that wasn't about power or profit, it was about pain. According to later court reports, Chan had a fixation, not just with control, but with domination. Not the kind found in films or fantasies, but the kind that breaks a person down, then rebuilds them into property. He was known to humiliate people who owed him money, to make them crawl, to make them beg. One woman later testified that she'd seen Chan force someone to eat off the floor just for being late on a payment. And then there were the rumors. that he kept cameras in his apartment, that he made recordings, that he liked watching people suffer, not for money, but for satisfaction. But none of it ever stuck. He paid his debts, never used weapons in public, always had someone else do the dirty work. He flew under the radar until Fan Man-yee. Fan owed him just a few $1,000s, a forgettable amount in gangland. But for Chan, it wasn't about the money. It was about the insult. She had stolen from him, and she had embarrassed him. That was all it took. And from that moment forward, Chan didn't just want repayment. He wanted to erase her. He lured her with false promises of leniency, convinced her she could work off the debt, then locked the door. From there, it was a descent into horror. But Chan wasn't alone. He brought others in, teenagers, young men who looked up to him. He made them feel important, powerful, part of something bigger. And once they crossed the line, there was no going back. That's what made Chan Man-lok so dangerous. Not just his cruelty, but his ability to infect others with it, to normalize it, to escalate it. He didn't need to scream, didn't need to strike first. He just created a space where monsters could grow. In prison, Chan has never spoken publicly, never apologized, never explained. To this day, no one knows what he thinks happened inside that apartment. But the silence might be the most chilling part, because monsters who roar can be caught, but monsters who whisper can lead others right into the dark. In the years that followed, Hong Kong moved forward. The courts adjourned, the cameras packed up, and the case became a memory. But not the kind of memory that fades. No, this was a memory that sat in the city's chest like something unspoken, something unfinished. Because the Hello Kitty murder wasn't just a story. It became a symptom of something deeper. The apartment where Fan Man-yee was held and tortured was never demolished. It still stands today. Unit 31 on the 3rd floor, once a scene of unimaginable torment, was simply cleaned, repainted, re-rented. New tenants were told nothing. Some only found out after moving in, and when they did, they fled. Not because of superstition, but because they could feel it, the wrongness in the walls. A presence that didn't rattle chains or slam doors, but simply lingered. Over time, stories began to spread. A woman's voice whispering through air vents, a shadow in the hallway mirror, lights that flickered in a pattern, like Morse code. Paranormal, maybe, but more than that, these stories became a way for people to explain something that had no rational shape, because even reality had become too terrifying. The Hello Kitty doll itself, the smiling, cartoon feline loved by children, was never the same again. Overnight, a symbol of innocence became a vessel for fear. Toy stores pulled it from shelves. Parents refused to buy it for their kids. Even grown women, longtime collectors, threw theirs away, because now, Hello Kitty had a face, not of cuteness, but of cruelty, and no one wanted to see it staring back from the bedpost. Tabloids kept the story alive for a time. Reenactments were filmed. Photos of the crime scene leaked. But slowly, the narrative shifted. Not toward justice, not toward Fan, but toward spectacle. People began calling it the Hello Kitty case, as if it were fiction, as if it were entertainment. Fan Man-yee's name was dropped from headlines. Her life flattened into a footnote. Her death twisted into folklore. And in doing so, the pain was once again erased. But beneath the surface, the city remembered. Counselors said patients brought up the case during unrelated therapy sessions. Parents used it to scare their children into obedience. Social workers found girls with Hello Kitty tattoos, burned onto themselves. It wasn't homage, it was identification. A way of saying, I know what it's like to be trapped. The case became a code, an unspoken marker passed between survivors of abuse, between children of trauma, between people the system had failed, just like it failed Fan. And Hong Kong, a city that thrives on image and ambition, had no answer. Because the question wasn't just, how did this happen? It was, how did we let it? Today, the apartment building still exists. Shops beneath it still sell soft drinks, lottery tickets, and snacks. Pedestrians pass without looking up. But if you ask the right person, at the right tea stall, on the right day, they'll lean in and say, you know that's where the doll was, right? And they won't need to say more, because the city remembers. Not with statues, not with memorials, but with silence. A silence so loud it echoes. In the winter of 2000, the trial of Chan Man-lok and his 2 teenage accomplices began in Hong Kong's High Court. But there would be no easy answers, no dramatic confessions, no redemptive closure, only layers of discomfort. The 3 accused stood before the court, charged not with murder, but with manslaughter. Why? Because the court could not definitively prove Fan Man-yee's cause of death. Too much time had passed. Too much of her was missing. The pathologists had no body, only pieces, and the law, written in black and white, was not built for crimes painted in shadow. Chan Man-lok, 34, the ringleader, the loan shark, the man who orchestrated the torture. He was given life in prison, but not for murder. For false imprisonment and manslaughter, he remained emotionless at sentencing. Not once did he apologize. Not once did he speak Fan's name. Then there were the teenagers. Leung Wai-lun, 21, a delivery boy, said to idolize Chan. And the most chilling, Raymond Chung Sin-hang, only 14 years old when the crime occurred. He wasn't coerced, he wasn't threatened, he chose to stay, he laughed on video, he participated, he became part of the horror. Both were sentenced to indefinite terms at the pleasure of the chief executive. A kind of political limbo. It meant they could be released when deemed rehabilitated. Not after a set number of years, but whenever the system felt it was enough. And what of Fan Man-yee? There was no justice for her. No family to speak on her behalf. No public memorial. She was simply buried. Quietly, without fanfare, without even her full remains. Her son, just a toddler when she died, was placed into foster care. He was never told the full story, only that his mother was gone, forever defined by a case he never chose, carrying a name the public had already buried. Some journalists tried to follow up with the survivors, with her former orphanage, with the social workers who lost track of her, but doors remained closed, voicemails unanswered. No one wanted to relive it. Because this case, everyone involved became a kind of survivor. The detectives who watched the footage, the doctors who examined the fragments, the judges who wrestled with loopholes, and even the reporters, many of whom confessed to losing sleep for years afterward. One journalist, in a rare interview, said, "There are things I saw that day that rewired my brain. I'll never unsee them, and I don't think I should. To this day, no one knows where Raymond Chung is. His records are sealed. He could be anywhere. He could be sitting on a park bench beside you. That's the lingering terror of this case. Some monsters don't vanish. They grow older, they blend in, they carry secrets in their silence. Some crimes end in a conviction, a sentence, a gavel drop. But the Hello Kitty murder never really ended. It embedded itself into Hong Kong's subconscious, into pop culture, into the DNA of modern fear, It became something more than a case. It became a warning. Today, the name Hello Kitty Murder is whispered in online forums, featured in horror podcasts, speculated on in Reddit threads. It's made appearances in horror fiction, crime novels, even film. But none of those retellings capture the aura of it, the way it made people feel, the visceral chill that came from a child's toy becoming a tomb. The public, hungry for answers, found only loose ends. Why did 3 people, including a teenager, do something so monstrous? Why didn't anyone hear her cries from the apartment above? Why didn't the police or social services protect Fan Man-yee when she first asked for help? No one had answers, only regrets. And perhaps that's what made this case immortal. It revealed the cracks in society, in the system, in ourselves. Because if something this brutal could happen in a busy district, with neighbors just a wall away, what else have we missed? What else is happening behind closed doors right now? Legal experts point to the case as a landmark moment. It forced Hong Kong to reevaluate its laws on sentencing, child crime involvement, and abuse reporting. It sparked reforms, yes, but reforms always come after. They don't save the ones already gone. Years later, school teachers reported students asking if the case was real. They'd seen clips on TikTok, heard whispers in dorm rooms, played pranks with dolls left in lockers. A new generation discovering it all over again, but this time with less empathy, more spectacle, more meme than memory. And that's the cruelest aftershock of all. Fan Man-yee wasn't remembered as a woman, or a mother, or a victim failed by institutions. She became a symbol, and then a brand of fear. Today, the apartment is still there. Some say it's cursed. Others say it's quiet now. But the question isn't whether ghosts walk those halls. It's whether we, as a society, ever stopped carrying them with us. There is no final frame here. No justice that can undo what was done. No true end. Only this, that in one of the world's most modern cities, a girl was lost in the most medieval way imaginable, and a doll, meant to bring comfort, was left to carry her remains.